For over 10 years, the Municipal Climate Change Action Centre has been helping communities save. But what does it really mean to save? It means lower power bills for your rec center. It means a municipal fleet that needs almost no maintenance. It means a dedicated local expert working to future-proof your operations. It means being the first in Canada to get the electricity for your town's operations to net zero. How? By putting solar panels on the aquatic center, the fire hall, the arena, the town hall, the golf course, the waste treatment plant, the shop, the athletic park, and adding a solar carport. And staying cash neutral while we do it. It means green jobs, it means a bright future for your kids, and sometimes it just means keeping the lights on. Investing in energy efficiency and renewable energy saves costs, reduces emissions, and builds resilience to our changing climate. This is a global effort, and we've each got to do our part. We're here to help you get it done.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for Understanding Community Generation in Alberta, presented by the Municipal Climate Change Action Centre and the Pembina Institute as a guest speaker. I'm Stephanie Ripley. I'm the project coordinator for the renewables team at the Action Centre, and I'm going to be starting things off here and then handing it over to Mark Baxter, who's the program lead of the renewables team at MCCAC, and to Vincent Morales from the Pembina Institute. So without further ado, we'll jump right in. And happy Earth Day to everyone as a as a start. So to start, we'd like to acknowledge that we would like to respectfully acknowledge that this presentation is being presented in Treaty 6 and 7 territories, as we are up in Edmonton and Vincent's down in Calgary. We acknowledge that the many First Nations, Métis and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries and whose presence continues to enrich our vibrant communities. So a little bit about the Action Centre to start us off. It was established in 2009 as a centre to provide funding, technical assistance, and education to support Alberta municipalities, schools, and community organizations in moving forward on projects to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, energy efficiency, and renewable energy projects. And we are a partnership between the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association, the Rural Municipalities of Alberta, and the Government of Alberta. So those three organizations are our governing bodies. And today, what we're going to be chatting about is mostly community generation, but we'll start off with a little bit of an overview of the grid in Alberta, microgeneration. We're going to chat a little bit about the Alberta Municipal Solar Program, which is another program specific to microgeneration that the Action Centre offers. And then we'll dive into community generation specific information. And then we'll pass it over to the Pembina Institute, who have been working for the last year or so on developing resources specific to municipalities and businesses on community generation and how they can become more involved in that space. So that's sort of our overview for the day. The Action Centre itself is celebrating 10 years of supporting municipalities and organizations across Alberta. And we have, sorry, I just realized that my notes are gone from the presentation that I had, but that's okay. We'll do a little bit of ad lib. So we have supported 102 municipalities on their projects. And 217 schools, nonprofits, and other community organizations have participated as well. We've catalyzed $38 million of renewable energy and energy efficiency projects throughout the province that have resulted in $4.9 million in lifetime energy savings for the participants that have carried out those projects. To date, we have actually 10 megawatts of solar that's been funded by the Action Centre is connected to the grid, with another 10 megawatts in the queue right now of projects that are currently under construction. And we've reduced a whole lot of greenhouse gas emissions through those projects and incentivized 345 full-time equivalent jobs as well. So lots of things that we're pretty proud of that we've accomplished over the last 10 years. So Alberta's electricity grid. This is probably an overview for some of you, but just to give a little bit of context off the top, traditionally the grid has been sort of a centralized grid, meaning that we have large generation stations, coal and gas plants, utility scale solar, utility scale wind projects that are directly connected to the transmission lines, which are high voltage lines that then transmit, as their name would suggest, electricity across the province. And then the electricity gets brought down to a lower voltage at the substations. So there are transformers there that transform it down to a lower voltage, and then it goes onto the distribution grid, at which point it goes out to municipalities and businesses and residences. That's so your home or your business is connected directly to the distribution grid as opposed to those high voltage transmission lines. So as the grid has evolved, there has been more and more of what we call distributed generation, meaning that not all of the electricity is being produced in those big scale plants directly connected to the transmission lines. There are small scale generation facilities and micro generation facilities that are actually connected to the distribution grid and feeding electricity into that lower voltage grid as well. So this is a little bit of what we're going to talk about today. So both micro generation is connected behind a meter, and small scale generation is connected directly to the grid and sells all of the electricity it produces into the grid. So talking a little bit about micro generation, and small scale versus micro. So small scale generation connects, as I mentioned, directly to the distribution grid with all of the electricity that it produces being sold to the grid. And so the owners of those generating units actually, they have the balancing pool participates on their behalf as part of the electricity market. And so they get paid directly in the wholesale market for the electricity that they produce. Whereas micro generation systems are very much intended, they're still connected to the distribution grid, but behind a meter. And their intention is to offset on-site electricity use. So they're only able to be as large as the facility that they're offsetting. So they can't produce more electricity over the course of a year as what that facility consumes in a year. And they are credited for any excess electricity that they produce. So when they're producing electricity, that power first goes to the facility they're connected to if there's need, and if there's not need, any extra goes onto the grid, and they do get credits on their electricity bill at the retail rate for small scale microgeneration, and then at the wholesale rate for large scale microgeneration, which is anything over 150 kilowatts. But so they're structured slightly differently, both connected to the distribution grid, but having a different structure there. The Alberta Municipal Solar Program is the Municipal Climate Change Action Center's program for microgeneration projects specifically in municipalities. So the eligibility here, all rural and urban municipalities in Alberta are eligible to participate to put solar PV on their facilities or on land that they own. Community-related organizations that are in municipally owned buildings or on municipally owned land can also participate in this program. The systems must be paid for and owned entirely by the municipality or the community organization, and they have to be compliant with the microgeneration regulations. So they need to be grid connected. We don't fund off-grid projects through this program, we'll get into a little bit of detail in the next slide. So this is participation. The program's been open since 2016. It operates on a first come, first served basis, and it's a rebate program. So the projects need to be paid for in full before the money is received from the Action Centre. We've had 46 municipalities and 97 unique projects participate so far, with, again, 20 megawatts of approved capacity. So 10 megawatts is already connected, with another 10 in the queue being constructed right now. And 13,633 tons of CO2 equivalent in annual reductions seen from all of the projects that we funded. So to participate, the way that the rebates are structured is sort of on a tiered basis, and this isn't in any way to penalize larger projects. It's just to reflect the economies of scale that are seen and the lower costs that tend to be associated with larger projects versus smaller projects. So there's a sliding scale depending on the size. And the way that we calculate the rebates, we do a base calculation here of either the per watt amount or 30% of total eligible costs. So there is a cap of 30%. So we would do the per watt calculation, and if we reach that 30% of eligible costs before you get to the per watt calculation, then you would be paid the lesser of the two. So That's the rebate structure. And then we also have a first-time applicant bonus to incentivize municipalities who haven't participated in this program before to see the benefits of solar. This came into effect with the most recent round of AMSP. And it is 25 cents per watt on top of that initial rebate, and available again to municipalities who are constructing their first project, their first microgeneration project under AMSP, and there's a maximum of $250,000 for that bonus. So it's on top of the base rebate of or the 30%. And the program is still open and accepting applications. We still have funding available. So if you are a municipality or know municipal leaders that might be interested in this, you can find more information on our website, and feel free to shoot us an email if you have any questions. So as a quick example, this is one of the projects that is most recently been completed. Sturgeon County installed 115.5 kilowatts of solar PV on their protective services building. They have 312 panels, I believe, is the total. And in this picture, actually, you don't see the full system. They have all of the roof-mounted modules that you're seeing, but they also have modules mounted on two sides of their building. So they took full advantage of the space that was available to them. The full cost of the system was $198,859. They received $88,541 in funding from us. And they expect, based on the amount of electricity they expect to produce every year, they expect their annual savings to be $10,000 or $10,849, which is pretty great. They also have gone to the step of putting up their online solar portals. So the online solar production is available on their website. So anybody that is within Sturgeon County or anyone that's just interested can actually go online and access their production, their live data. So you can see how much electricity that system is producing on any day, which is pretty great public engagement. So I'm going to pass it over to Mark, who is going to cover the community generation side of things and get us a little deeper into that.
Perfect, thanks. Can I just get a little sound check, Steph? Am I still coming through? Okay?
Sound good.
All right. Yeah, thanks to everyone for being here today with us and joining us during these sort of crazy times. We're working through our first totally virtual webinar for our team here. So hopefully it'll continue to run smoothly, but looks like things have been working well so far. So just head to the next slide there, Steph. There we go. So yeah, basically we wanted to ensure that we covered the microgeneration side of things first, as it is a key piece of understanding community generation in Alberta, given that they are both on the distribution connected side of things, and there's often confusion between the two. So I think Steph gave a great overview of what microgeneration is and what it is not. And now we'll jump into talking more specifically about community generation and how it's different and what sort of the pros and cons of each are. So in order to understand community generation, we just want to cover briefly the recent regulation that is enabling this type of generation in Alberta, and that's the small scale generation regulation. So that was established in 2018 with the goal of reducing barriers for distribution connected electricity generation projects in Alberta. The regulation is not that long. It's fairly minimal, with the additional rules to be provided separately by the Alberta Utilities Commission, which I'll talk briefly about in a minute here. But anybody curious to really read through the regulation in whole can find it on the Queen's Printer online, and it's not overly complicated, but we'll give a brief overview now. So it outlines the requirements and definitions around setup and operation of a community generation project. So basically outlining all these terms that you're hearing today in legal language and what is and isn't going to be considered small scale or community generation. It outlines that the balancing pool will act as the default market participant for these types of projects. So basically what that means is there's the opportunity for anybody connecting as a community generator to have the balancing pool as the entity be the one managing basically the transactions with the electricity market in the event that's something they don't want to control on their own. So minimizing some of those barriers for how your revenue will be generated through your project. It basically provides Albertans the ability to generate revenue by selling the renewable electricity directly to the grid in a way that isn't possible through microgeneration. As Steph mentioned, microgen really is just for offsetting, and though you might see some credits on your electricity bill, it's really not intended to be a revenue generation model, and it's not specifically going to provide you those long-term benefits as much as it is just offsetting your own electricity and providing you some credits there. So as I mentioned, as the regulation is now in place, the Alberta Utilities Commission, the AUC, is the entity that's been tasked by the government with creating the actual operational rules and application forms for connecting these projects into the grid. And there's been a number of consultations around that so far, which we encourage you to look on their website and get involved in if you're interested. And a few of the documents have been released, with some more yet to come as these consultations wrap up. So with the previous graphic you had seen sort of outlining the difference between just generally distribution connected projects and microgeneration projects, this is just sort of showing the difference now between small scale and community generation projects, as they are slightly different. Though they are both enabled under the same regulation, the small scale projects, so small scale generation, basically is the simpler version, which is just a distribution connected project of renewable electricity generation that's connected directly to the distribution grid and provides revenue to the small scale generation owner. Community generation, on the other side, is a subset of this small scale generation, which provides tangible benefits to communities. So in both cases, they're directly connected to the distribution grid, not behind the meter like microgen, and they both sell all their electricity produced to the market. However, community generation is different in that there's tangible community benefits, either economic, environmental, or social, from the development of the project that are formally documented in a community benefit agreement or community benefit statement. And I'll talk a little bit about that in the next slide. So, as I mentioned, community generation, distribution connected renewable or alternative energy system that provides community benefits. The community benefits statement is a requirement for projects when the owner of the generating unit is not involved in any type of partnership. They're the sole owner. So in this case, that we're stating municipality, but just for clarity for anyone on the webinar that is not interested in the municipal piece of all this, community generation is available for a number of different types of entities in Alberta. That's listed. That includes municipalities, and they're in the regulation. So that would include societies, condos, cooperatives, educational institutions, First Nations, nonprofits, etc. We're using municipality in our examples here, obviously, for the sake that that's kind of our area of interest, but just keep that in mind. So in a situation where a municipality is the full owner of their generating unit, they would need a community benefits statement to qualify as a community generator, and basically just outlining in that legal document what the sort of larger benefits beyond just the revenue that they're generating are from the project. So that could be things like jobs created for their local residents, or GHGs reduced. All those types of things can be, in theory, community benefits. The actual requirements of approved community benefits are, again, something the AUC is going to be releasing, hopefully, details on more closely in the future here. Community benefits agreement, on the other side of things, is required when projects are not fully owned. So from a municipality's perspective, it would be a situation where they are either perhaps partnering with a developer on a project, they're not a full 100% owner of the generating unit, or they don't have a equity stake in the generating unit, but are interested in receiving benefits from the project. So perhaps they are not interested in having any ownership stake at all, but they do want to see benefits from a project being developed in their community. So in that case, they would enter into a community benefit agreement, or CBA, with the developer, sort of legally capturing what the benefits they hope to see from the project are. Again, whether that's some type of fund created for the community from the revenue, jobs, environmental benefits, etc. So On the ownership side of things, we did just want to quickly mention a couple points, which can have more detail found in some of the resources on our website, but just to kind of briefly go over them now. There are a few additional requirements for municipalities specifically if they're looking to be owners of generating units. So there is a piece of legislation called the Electric Utilities Act, specifically Section 95, which basically outlines that municipalities must receive an additional level of approval to become owners of electrical generating units to ensure that they are compliant with fair, efficient, and open competition, because they can have access to some tax benefits and things like that at times. So that is a piece that can be a bit of an additional barrier for municipalities looking to be full owners of community generation projects, but that doesn't mean that they aren't able to. And even if ownership is something they're not directly interested in, there's definitely lots of ways to continue to be involved from a partnership perspective. So why is community generation something that is of interest, and why not maybe just stick with micro generation? I think kind of as we've alluded to previously here, there's a really great opportunity here for sort of larger economic diversification and long-term revenue from community generation projects that isn't necessarily available through simple micro generation projects. So again, with community generation specifically, all the benefits that you could see captured in one of those statements or agreements on the economic, social, or environmental side can be really motivating factors for communities to be involved in something like this that actually is a bit larger and generates some of those revenues to put towards those benefits. And it gives those communities a say in what those benefits actually are, rather than just a credit on an electricity bill somewhere that maybe nobody other than the owner of that system really has any control over where that goes. There is a great opportunity here to support Alberta's energy diversification. So as mentioned, these community generation projects are renewable or alternative electricity generation projects. So a great opportunity to diversify as some of the larger generators that Stephanie mentioned, the coal generators, et cetera, come offline. It's a great way to diversify our energy sources and also increase energy on the distribution grid to increase reliance. And then obviously there's some great opportunities along with that in job creation, economic development, and general community resilience for communities in Alberta, specifically. Obviously having that distribution connected generation can really increase the reliability of the electricity grid during any type of emergency. So briefly to cover the programs that the Action Centre is involved in the community generation space. So as mentioned, we have the Alberta Municipal Solar Program for microgeneration. And on community generation, we've offered two programs over the last year and a little bit here. So first is the Community Generation Capacity Building Program, which Pembina Institute was a successful recipient of, and Vincent will talk a little bit about the work that they carried out through that program. So that is a program that we offered in partnership with Energy Efficiency Alberta, with the intention of basically providing funding to increase the capacity essentially of the community generation industry in Alberta to start to move these projects forward. So they provided funding for three types of projects: technical development activities, partnership development activities, and development of tools and training. So we ended up funding 12 projects from the Action Centre side, which had a focus on municipalities. Those were a mix of all three types. So quite a few focused on type 1 and 2 of technical and partnership development to really sort of do the feasibility studies around some of these community generation projects and what they might look like if they were to be built. And then a number of projects also on type 3 of development tools and training, a few of which Vincent will cover. And then on the second program, it's the Municipal Community Generation Challenge. So this was a partnership program that we delivered with Alberta Innovates. And it was really designed to cover sort of that next step beyond capacity building. So for Alberta municipalities and their projects that had kind of covered some of that feasibility work already, and basically were looking for funding to bring their projects to fruition, this was an opportunity for them. So The municipalities and their project teams went through a multi-stage application process in hopes of receiving an investment for the development of their community generation project. And that challenge is now complete, and we are hoping to release news on the successful recipients in the coming weeks here, so stay tuned for that. And with that, I will pass it over to Vincent to cover some of the initiatives that Pembina Institute is working on in community generation, and let's see if this transition works as smoothly as we practiced it.
Thank you, Mark. And as we are transitioning the slideshow, I invite attendees to have a nice stretch. After all, it's Earth Day. Okay, so yeah. My name is Vincent Morales. I'm an analyst at the Pembina Institute. I'm based in Calgary, and after this great overview that we got from Stephanie and Mark, we already learned a lot about community generation, and so I'm offering you to learn more about some of the benefits, although Mark covered them really well, but as well, what are the barriers that you may face or that you may be facing when dealing with clean energy projects and community generation projects in particular. And I'll share some tools about how to mitigate those barriers. And today's Earth Day, so I hope everybody has their Earth Day outfit on. Okay, so in case you're not too familiar with the Pembina Institute, we are a not-for-profit think tank that works towards advancing a clean energy transition in Canada. You may have come across some of our research and analysis because with our free reports available on our website, pembina.org. And you may as well have attended some of our public workshops or webinars. In February, we co-organized an event with the Solar Energy Society of Alberta around these clean energy issues. And recently we ran webinars as well for municipalities covering renewable energy best practices, and as well how to have difficult conversations as they can occur in Alberta surrounding climate change and the energy transition. As a national organization, we cover all aspects of the energy transition. Today we'll cover mostly, I guess we're already covering mostly, a decarbonized electricity grid and a competitive economy. That's particularly of relevance these days as many businesses are struggling economically due to health measures, and fortunately there is a path forward. Okay, so some context here. Stephanie already brilliantly explained you and showed you how the grid works, but I just wanted to highlight here that, yeah, it's like a century-old way of bringing electricity from large-scale power plants up to your jukebox at home or your building. So it's like electrons at that time get a one-way ticket from the generator to the consumer. What's interesting with all this technological innovation going on, changing consumer demand and consumer choices, environmental awareness, and decreasing costs of these innovations, we're getting now to a bi-directional flow in the grid where electricity is not anymore a one-way ticket from the large-scale generator that is today diversifying from coal and gas to more wind and solar, but as well the consumer is becoming a producer as well via either rooftop solar, or even for the owners of electric vehicles with smart chargers, they become consumers are becoming participants in the reliability of the electricity system. And there's as well so that these clean energy technologies contribute to an increased resilience of our system, and that's true as well for rural areas that could be vulnerable to natural disasters. I guess I mentioned these trends of changing consumer choices, technological innovation, and decreasing costs. So in Alberta, it's not only something you can read in the news that happens globally or in the US, we're observing it in Alberta right now. In 2017 and 2018, the government of Alberta organized the renewable electricity program that was basically a competition to allow renewable energy developers to offer the lowest cost electricity that they could provide with a new renewable energy project. And as a result of that program, we discovered like a concrete example of the potential in the province. And so as this slide shows, we have wind and solar projects that are already built or that are being built that are coming at a lower cost than electricity that would come from a brand new natural gas-fired power station, or that would come from an existing coal-fired power station equipped with carbon capture and storage, like the existing power station in Saskatchewan. So this is good news for everybody, for consumers, for the environment, and for community generation projects. This trend of decreasing costs is being observed for renewable energy, but as well for other types of clean technology, including battery storage. That's why you see more and more electric vehicles on the roads, and you hear more about them in the news. And when bundled together, renewable energy and other clean technologies, you get to build what we call a clean portfolio, which would bring the same level of reliability services as what our current fossil fuel-based grid can offer. And we ran a study, we did a study that compared the cost of providing those same reliable electricity supplies from a clean portfolio versus a combination of natural gas-fired power stations. And the good news is already today in Alberta, it's cheaper to provide reliable electricity using clean sources. So a mix of wind, solar, battery storage, energy efficiency, demand flexibility, also called demand side response. So I guess that's in the broader picture to make everybody know that yes, clean energy can contribute to competitiveness economically, and managing costs for our residents, for all residents. So those costs that can keep electricity at low prices for consumers is one of the many benefits. Mark brilliantly covered the benefits that community generation projects can bring. I guess I'll just emphasize the fact that clean energy projects really stimulate the local economy. They create local jobs and local business opportunities. So this is, I think, a very relevant point in these days where a lot of businesses have some economic struggles these days. As the economy will start ramping up again, clean energy is definitely a way to stimulate that local economy. And of course, the environmental benefits and the reduction in air pollutions that lead to improved health for everybody. How to get involved in community generation. We have a resource for you, the Alberta Community Solar Guide. That is the go-to resource when you are interested in getting into community generation, but you're not exactly sure about what are all the different steps to go through. So we have that. So you don't have to read the report cover to cover. You can just select the section that you think is relevant to your question or your interest, and it's easy to consult the report that way. That's freely available on our website and on the Action Center's Learning Center. Here's a case study that's more detailed in the report. I won't detail it too much here, but I guess one thing I want to highlight is that community generation projects are all about partnerships. And in this case that's showing to your screen, there was one lead organization, the Clean Energy Collective, that was in Colorado, and they formed partnerships with many different stakeholders. The community participants that eventually bought a stake in that community project, the government for some grants, tax credits, and as well from a policy direction given to the utility to reach a renewable energy target. That direction then pushed the utility to get to seal an agreement with the lead organization to shape a long-term power purchase agreement that really makes the financing of the project easier. The lead organization as well benefited from a low-cost lease thanks to an agreement for the land, thanks to an agreement with the local municipality. So yeah, community generation, all about partnerships. As I said, I wanted to cover with you some of the challenges that you may already be facing when considering community generation projects, and that's valid for clean energy projects in general as well. I guess I'll let you read that slide as I have a quick drink. Okay, so I'll cover these one by one because we have some tools coming soon to help you tackle these. So about the lack of knowledge, I guess I just mentioned that. A lot of people who are find solar really cool, or who want to get involved for many different reasons. They may be super enthusiastic about it, but can feel a bit lost because they don't know where to start. That's where our community solar guide comes in. So to help with that. And we also run the Municipal Leadership in Renewable Energy program that was started thanks to the Community Generation Capacity Building grant from the Action Center. So it's a combination of keeping you up to date about what's the latest research and the latest tools available to help you reduce the challenges you may have with regards to renewable energy. We are developing materials regularly, and we are bringing you the right experts to help you tackle some challenges. I mentioned the webinars we ran recently, and we are running soon a webinar around financing. And one of the key publication that's coming soon is a municipal primer on actionable measures that municipalities can take around clean energy. I'll cover that in a second. Addressing resident concerns, we heard that when a municipality gets involved in clean energy, they get more questions from residents who either are not too familiar with renewable energy yet, so that just generates questions from them, or they just want to learn more. So we are gathering some sort of a frequently asked question document to help you, to equip you with answers that can help you answer your residents' concerns or questions. For example, does renewables, what does that mean for utility bills? I guess short answer is it keeps costs low, but you'll see more in detail. Do renewables mean that I'll get more blackouts at my house? Short answer is no, but again, you'll be notified when this resource is available. One really of the, it's probably in the top 3 challenges that municipalities face regarding clean energy projects and community generation is financing. Unfortunately, there are tools out there to help you with that. The Action Center has a really great comprehensive funding guide that gives you all the different options available in the province around clean energy projects, including community generation. We as well we did some research around financing programs offered by banks in Alberta and utilities. So you may see some of these programs popping up in existing reports soon as an upgrade. And then we are also, one of our initiatives is the Business Renewable Center, which helps shape partnerships between project leads who want and renewable energy developers with businesses and institutions that want to get 100% renewable energy. So imagine if your community generation project could conceptually help a business to reach its 100% renewable target goal. So that's via a mechanism called a virtual power purchase agreement. We covered that in a few webinars. We have resources out there. We have the Business Renewable Center Canada website. If you want to learn more about this initiative, and if you think you would be interested in being a member, feel free to reach out to us either via that website, or you can reach out to me as well. And finally, there are systemic challenges that cannot be fixed with a quick fix, that are preventing renewable energy and community generation projects to happen more frequently, or to have much more projects. So I guess governments then have that role of updating their regulatory framework, so that instead of keeping a regulatory framework that's more than a decade old, where it needs to be updated to be able to host these new technologies that are less than a decade old, or that are now mature. So there is that role. And then I put in there examples of what municipalities can do at their level. There will be more detail in our primer that will be published soon. You'll be notified about that, with all the different actionable measures that you can take to take advantage of all clean energy communities, with all the benefits that come with it. This is a quick summary of the resources that I covered in this presentation, so currently available and coming soon. To learn more about the ones coming soon, the chances are you're already on our mailing list as a municipality, but you can as well sign up for our newsletter. And I guess soon, within a month, we'll organize a webinar on clean energy financing, which I'm sure will be of interest to many of you. Where to find all these resources? The Pembina Institute's website is a great resource, as well as the Municipal Climate Change Action Center's Learning Center. It's a wonderful library of resources. One of my favorite ones recently is the electric vehicle costs simulator. I'll let you play with that in your free time. As a bonus, we maintain a map of clean energy projects happening all across Alberta. So if you have a community project or any type of clean energy project, could be even a new electric bus that you're bringing to your transit system, let us know, reach out to us so that we can feature it on our map. And we as well run a blog as part of the New Energy Economy website that goes deeper into sharing the positive stories happening across Alberta. Finally, huge thanks to the Municipal Climate Change Action Centre for being great partners and for the support provided through the Community Generation Capacity Building Program. Also, thank you to Energy Efficiency Alberta, the RBC Foundation, and Environment and Climate Change Canada, who supported as well the development of materials. With that, thank you. Feel free to add more questions in there. Pour les francophones et les franco-albertains, n'hésitez pas à m'écrire en français. Je peux aussi répondre à vos questions en français. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Vincent. And I'm going to swip back over here really quickly just to talk a little bit about a few of the other Action Centre funding programs that we have available and our advisory services. So in addition to the AMSP, which we've already covered, and the 2 community generation programs that we have recently completed that Mark was speaking about, we also have an electric vehicles for municipalities program. And that covers, it has rebates available for municipalities to purchase or lease new passenger, medium and heavy duty and low speed non-road battery electric and plug-in hybrid vehicles. It's all a big mouthful, but and then the associated charging stations that go with them as well. The program also covers the costs of feasibility studies to help municipalities quantify the benefits of transitioning to an electric fleet. So that's the EVM program. The Recreation Energy Conservation Program, or our REC program, has rebates available for municipalities to improve the energy efficiency of municipally owned recreation facilities. So it covers scoping audits, engineering studies, and implementation projects to improve energy efficiency in those facilities. The Municipal Energy Manager Program has funding available for municipalities, again, to hire specifically an energy manager who will identify and lead energy and emissions reduction projects and find cost-saving opportunities in the meantime for municipalities. And then the Solar for Schools program is our final open rebate program that has rebates for public, charter, separate, and francophone school authorities in Alberta to install solar PV systems on their school facilities and teach students about renewable energy at the same time. So those are our funding programs. And then our advisory services as well that we offer, the Municipal Energy Champions program is a pilot that we have just started that has 6 municipalities participating, and it's to support smaller municipalities manage their energy consumption. So the program provides support for an internal energy champion, so somebody that's already within the municipality, to identify energy savings opportunities and implement projects. So they would have direct connection with Ronick, who's the person running that program on our side, to help walk them through the stages of what they can do to help reduce their energy consumption and find some cost savings at the same time. And then we have the Partners for Climate Protection program as well, which is a network. Municipalities that join up to become part of the PCP are connected to free resources and supports, and then a network of other municipalities across Canada, all working towards developing climate action plans and reducing their emissions. The program is administered by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and ICLE Canada, and the Action Centre is the program's regional climate advisor for Alberta. So those are what we've got going on right now. And then we're going to move next to just say thank you very much for attending. And I think we've answered a good chunk of the questions that came in, but there's a few left in the queue here, and we'll wait. If you have any questions, we can try and answer those as well. So if you can just type your questions into the Q&A chat box and hit send, and then we'll receive them on this end and get them into the queue. And let's just see here. Okay. Oh, the one other thing I wanted to mention too, while we're waiting for a few more questions to come in, is that we also have a webinar coming up in a couple of weeks. So on May, or actually next week, on May 26th, You can join the Action Center to learn how to help your recreation facility reduce its energy use, greenhouse gas emissions, and costs with the Action Center. Pardon me, that's not next week. It's a month from now. my brain saw 26 and assumed that it was next week. So on May 26th, it's the Recreation Energy Conservation webinar. The City of Leduc is going to join as a guest municipality and presenter to speak about the projects that they've recently undertaken under this program as well. And you can register for the webinar at mccac.ca on the events page. So we'll hop over to a few more of the questions here that maybe we haven't yet answered. There's one here, are these renewable energy projects able to accommodate or upgrade to net metering? And I assume that you're asking about microgeneration and small scale generation, or just the microgeneration side of things. Small scale generation, as it feeds directly onto the grid and it sells all of its electricity, is not applicable for a net metering system. But the way that microgeneration works in Alberta is it's a sort of net metering. So it's bi-directional metering is what it's called here. So basically any electricity that gets sent onto the grid, if you have a microgeneration system connected, you will receive a bi-directional meter that replaces the traditional meter. And it will meter any electricity going onto the grid and any electricity coming into the facility from the grid. And then at the end of the month, your utility bill will just reconcile those costs. So basically, you'll receive a credit for any excess electricity that you've put onto the grid above and beyond what you've consumed. Hopefully that helps answer that one. I think Mark just answered the question about pace.
Going through answering a bunch of these. So if the answers to any of the ones that we've typed in there are not sufficient for anyone, just feel free to add another question and we'll try and get to it. Here's one, is there approximate cost per kilowatt for community solar farm? Do you know if that's in your community solar guide, Vincent? We have some of our own numbers, but.
Yeah, I'm not, I don't think so, especially given that our solar guide was published in 2016, so even if it was then, the cost numbers would be outdated. So yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing to consider for this question is, it's going to be highly dependent on a number of factors. Obviously, in terms of size for each system, that's going to differ. We didn't cover it too specifically, but microgeneration in Alberta can accommodate systems up to 5 megawatts, whereas community generation systems can in theory be as large as 25 megawatts. There's no maximum size limit. It's basically limited by the capacity on the distribution network to connect your project. But as far as price per kilowatt for solar, we're seeing dollar per watts, definitely in the $2 range right now throughout our programs. So take that into account with some of the other factors that might come into play with partnership development and things like that for community generation projects. It's tough to give an exact number, but perhaps something to give you some thought anyway.
Yeah, and I guess on that note, it's a great question, and I forgot to mention to all attendees that please let us know what type of information, support, and resources that could help you that the Pembina Institute could provide to you. As we are working, helping municipalities in this transition.
Okay, so just looking through here.
Oh, there's a
couple more at the bottom.
So I guess I'd like to answer that one of the latest questions around reliability issues. So there's the question around, with the influx of renewables, are we seeing any problems on the grid right now with regards to harmonics and dirty power equipment downtime? So I'm guessing anything related to the variability of renewables impacting the electricity grid. So the short answer is there's no issue right now. AESO, the Alberta Electric System Operator, in a report mentioned that to meet the Alberta's 30% renewable energy target, and at the same time phasing out coal, there is absolutely no risk to reliability even if we only keep building wind farms and solar farms without any other clean technology to help manage that on-demand side of power supply. But as I mentioned in the presentation, with a clean portfolio where you integrate more demand-side response, so smart appliances at home that can be connected, that can be controlled remotely if consumers agree to, and with battery storage, then there is still clean energy can be supplied reliably and affordably.
Great, thanks, Vincent. And I think we've answered everything in the queue now.
I see another quick one on the costs
of
renewable energy systems. Fully factor in the carbon impact of the environment. So yeah, definitely. So you're right. That's definitely a concern from residents about what's the full life cycle footprint of all these clean energy technologies. And that's one of the questions we're covering in our upcoming frequently asked question document. And I guess the short answer for you all here is that even if you take into account the mining necessary to take the minerals and the materials to build a wind farm or a solar panel, and you average everything over the lifetime of the project, the solar, wind, clean energy in general has the lowest footprint, and it's like an order of magnitude lower than natural gas or coal-fired power. Yeah, but more detail in that document. I invite you to check that out when it's up.
Okay, and I haven't seen any other questions come in here, so I think we're good. Maybe we'll just wait another couple of minutes just to see if anyone has anything that's popped up.
Give it a minute. I'll also point out for anyone interested, so both the web pages for the two programs in community generation that were mentioned have some resources on the topic in the sidebar if you're interested in further reading, as well as our learning center. And then also we did publish a short blog post at the beginning of April that basically covers kind of this presentation in a very succinct form. The differences between all the types of generation in Alberta with the graphics that you saw in our presentation, if you're interested in taking a shorter read to anyone you know in your network about what you saw today.
I think we can say thank you very much for attending. Happy Earth Day to everyone, and we hope to see you again soon at one of our webinars or participating in one of our programs. And feel free again to reach out. Our contact information is up and available there. We'd be happy to receive any of your questions, or if you need more information about anything, any of us are available to answer those. So
yes, thanks so much everyone, and
thanks very much.
Thank you.
Take care.